Right, and we have tracing and matching shapes. So you get some pretty simple cookie cutters. I always recommend starting with a circle or an oval of some sort. This is a great season to do egg shapes for tracing. You just put it anywhere on your paper, and you get to pick out a crayon. And you're going to trace the inside. So it's going to be much easier than the outside. When you trace it, you want to do the same motion that you would if it was a letter. So we're going to start in the upper, kind of towards the right of the letter on the top, and then you're going to move in a counterclockwise direction because that's the direction we use when we're writing our letters. Then you can remove it, and if you had a couple different sizes of circles, I would use those to start. If a child has done this work with circles and they're pretty good at tracing, then you can get more complicated shapes. So something that requires more movement. But this is obviously going to be much more difficult than a circle where it's a continuous line. And you can do a couple of different shapes on there. And when you're done, you can add sensorial exploration to this by then matching the shapes back to their images. So part of the reason that we have them put the cookie cutters back on the shapes that they've traced, we do this for a couple different things. When they get into Children's House, we introduce what are called metal insets. And there's the outside of the inset, which is similar to this, where they get to hold it in place and trace the inside. And then there is the inside of the inset, which would be the opposite of this, where it's the whole thing, and then you have to trace on the outside. And they will trace those over the top of each other. And it just reinforces that you can trace an object in different ways and it still create the same outline.
Oh, I have been wondering about that, about why the pink part was separate from the blue part.
Mm-hmm.
And actually that makes sense because last Friday I was trying to help Helen trace a triangle, but she couldn't do it because I gave her the blue part, but she could have done it if I gave her the pink part.
Yes. So the outside is much easier to trace if you're tracing the inside of the outside. Because you could, if you had a child who was really good at tracing on the inside, you could, even with the cookie cutters, have them do the outside. But I mean, just watch the difficulty of even a circle from the outside to the inside. I can't do a continuous line. I have to pick up my hand. Not quite. And you're more likely to move it if you're having to do the outside, where you're having to lift up your hand and then reposition it. So it's a lot of control of movement with writing skills, and then it's also showing them a continuous line can be made from one shape. So tracing is a lot of fun, and it's again just working on their pencil graphs, and then they can color it. So once you're done with that, then I would ask them to get a different color. And then at this stage, we're not really going to be focusing on doing specific types of lines, but then we're going to ask them if they want to color the inside. And at this age, I'm not expecting that they stay within the lines, but that is part of what we're doing. When they color a stock picture, yes, they're getting the coloring concept, but when they're coloring something that they have created, kids will tend to put a little bit more effort into the coloring. Because it's not just a picture that they're coloring, it's their picture that they're coloring.
There's more intention behind it.
Yes. And if they go outside the lines, I mean, it's no big deal. but they're getting some really good practice with control of movement with their hand. I mean, think about when you're coloring, how many strokes are you doing? Like if we were to sit here and ask them to do some line strokes, so let's draw a line like this. Let's draw a line like this. If you ask them to make a whole page of that, think of how many of those strokes they've actually done after coloring in a full form. So it's line stroke practice, but to them it's just fun coloring. So there's lots of creativity that they get to do with that, as well as the control of movement.
So would this be for my older twos or my 1.5s?
It's for anybody who's ready. If someone has a really good pincer grasp and they are able to hold things in
So
place,
much
and you might even help them when, especially, I mean, I would start with the circle for
Yeah.
sure,
I
but you
even
could
have
try it with
this
any of them.
Really old tape especially.
So I know like Hawkins actually has a really good pencil grip.
Yeah.
You know what
And
she's
he's
about
really
the-
into like little small strokes
Yeah.
right now.
You can do that.
So doing
Yeah.
this kind of
He
helps
does that. He
expand
colors just like
that
that.
palette, if
Nobody
you
else
will.
does
It's
that.
not the
Really?
small strokes anymore.
Yeah, that's what I
because
was,
they're
he was the
having
one that I
strokes
was
on the
thinking.
outside.
For sure.
But there's not an age limit on this.
And
If
we're
you
trying
have a
to think
child
maybe the
who
reason
has
he
all of
doesn't
those
talk much
skills
is
that you feel
because
like they
speak
need to
a different
have,
language.
then certainly
Because
go
she
ahead and
says
introduce
when
it.
his dad picks him up,
That's
he
like
talks like
before Evie
crazy.
moved up,
Really?
I would write a line with like a
Bridget
highlighter,
does?
and then
You're
have
kidding
her
me.
trace it with like a pencil
Oh.
or a crayon.
And he's
Well,
showing
and
signs
after a
now.
while, she
that would
started
make
getting
sense.
it.
Yeah,
Doing
and
really
come to
good.
think of it, Tavisha was the same way. She didn't talk for a long time because she spoke
Yeah.
a different language.
So, always start with a rounded shape that has no edges, no points, and then expand from there.
I was telling Miss Becca, Rudra can do that color like that. Like he'll hold it tight and he'll make small tight lines and like start to where it's like all together like what you just did.
Yeah.
He can do it.
That's cool. Well, I would like you guys to pass this around. I want you to trace the inside and the outside just so that you can experience the difficulty difference between the two.
That's like this morning I traced one of the huge Easter eggs. It's like this big. And then I wrote on the inside with a white crayon their name, and then I made like a little design. And then they watercolored over it.
Oh, nice.
So they had like a
As a
huge
reminder,
surprise
right, where I had to
face
pick
once
up.
they
Yeah.
saw that it was there.
And if you overlap somebody else's, it's okay. Making bubbles? Oh.
Some Google for this.
Interesting. Those little rubber things at the bottom.
Yeah.
So they don't skew.
That's smart. We should have that on every look.
I think we should have that on picture.